believe Jesus is God or the Son of God?
American Jesus.
Jesus has nothing to do with being a good American.
You know little or nothing about Jesus. The Nazarene was a philosopher on this earth.
Welcome to the American Jesus Show. American Jesus is a social libertarian, empathic intellectual, a reverse heretic, secular atheist, anti-capitalist, and patriotic Judas. Here he discusses everything from philosophical Christian mythology to the need for a 12-step reformation. If you would like to find out more about the show or American Jesus himself, please visit AmericanJesusShow.com. Now here's our host, the crusher of contradiction, the hemorrhoid on the shrinker of American nihilism, the king and the bird, the monkey and the branch, your friend and mine, American Jesus.
Welcome to the show. I am American Jesus, and these are my opinions. Yeah. It's been a long time since I did one of these podcasts, because mostly they make me very sad. But here in the last couple of years, I have gotten to a point where I feel like I can actually say my piece and not care that it makes me sad. So, this show today, the first show, is more going to be exploration into the types of topics I might discuss, the kind of my influences, just to kind of give you a basic idea, because believe it or not, a lot of people, when they see the American Jesus in the title of my show, they might be misled or come to a false conclusion about what it is that I talk about. And there are probably a lot of people that might have a hard time listening to some of the things that I'm going to say, mostly because they may have presuppositions as to my points of view on certain things. So you really kind of have to hear me out. And so this podcast here is to kind of have some type of baseline that I can refer back to and not have to continue to go over this stuff again and again. If you go to the American Jesus Show website, there's no "the" in that. It's just American Jesus Show. You might see a list of words that I think describe best where my opinions come from. And it's got the added benefit of having two words that seem to be mutually exclusive put together as an ideological phrase. And I think that makes me sound really smart and not dumb at all, like I don't know what the words mean. Let's just kind of go through what it says on the actual webpage itself. First off, I call myself a secular atheist. What does that really mean? Well, obviously, secular means what it means. Okay. So you would think that they both mean similar things, and that I'm just being redundant. What I mean is that atheism in and of itself seems to have some form of canon that, oh, everyone that's an atheist believes this way. And of course, you know, atheists know that that's not the case. And then there's this lawnmower and a bunch of dogs outside. So we have secular atheists. That's the first one. A secular atheist, in my opinion, is an individual who, while being an atheist, does not hold to any particular canon of atheism. Not that there is such a thing, but people tend to pretend that there is. So I am secular in my atheistic views, meaning that I don't have any firm beliefs in the beliefs that I do not hold. So, and the next thing we see here is a reverse heretic. Well, we all know what a heretic is. A heretic is somebody who doesn't hold to the traditional or agreed upon understanding of a particular dogmatic religion. So, I would kind of be a heretic, except for the fact that what is considered orthodox seems to continually change. So now that let's say now that the Pope has decided that it's impossible to refute evolution, then I perceive that what is going to be orthodox soon will also include this belief in evolution. So we have 5 dogs. Do you believe it? 5 dogs. And a lawnmower man. And this is when he decides to mow the fucking lawn. I mean, obviously, I'm not blaming him for mowing the lawn. Okay, moving on. I am also what I call a social libertarian, which means I'm a socialist libertarian. Oh, this is one of my favorite ones. So I believe in the libertarian ideology. Libertarian ideology means that every individual should have liberty. Liberty in our country cannot be given to somebody unless we live in a socialist environment, because otherwise person's individual liberties will be restricted by people in places of power. I mean, so just by getting rid of government does not get rid of power. If anything, it means that government is not doing its job in the libertarian viewpoint. So a socialist and a libertarian gets together, they have a child, and it survives, then you got me. Because what I firmly believe, I believe in liberty, and I believe that because I believe in liberty, that we should have universal health care, because I think that in order for people to be able to create their own life, they need to be healthy, they need to be alive, that there should be some level of restriction on firearms. As a libertarian, I believe that, because I think that that kind of protects our individual liberties. That you can't point a gun at me and say, hey, I'm going to keep you at my house and take away all of your liberties, or I'm going to kill you and take away all of your liberties. So the government's role is fairly large in the libertarian viewpoint if you're really about liberty, because liberty is not something that is going to evolve naturally. Oppression evolves naturally because people are generally more persuaded by fear. And oppression is created through the creation of fear. So, if you're like me and you believe that universal health care, that increased taxes on the wealthy, that all of these things should be part of the libertarian viewpoint, then you, my friend, are a social libertarian. Now, I don't know if that's really a thing. I don't know if any of these things are really things, but they're things to me, and I just made them up. So, that's what I am. And so I believe in the only purpose for having socialism is to enforce individual liberties. There you go. That's pretty straightforward. I'm also an anti-capitalist. I think capitalism kind of takes away from our individual liberties, to play off of the previous thing that we were talking about. I believe that capitalism is destroying our country. Yes, I do. Because it changes the focus of kind of our ability to create an environment of freedom, of democracy, because you can't have these ideologies and also kind of be like, oh, but unabashed greed is really great. You know, you can't base a society of these lofty ideals on one of the 7 deadly sins. It's impossible because greed infects the weak, and the weak actually end up running the country. It's just that simple. The problem with greed, the problem with all of these, what was, referred to in the Bible as the 7 deadly sins, is that they're not talking about behaviors, they're talking about weaknesses, and they're talking about idolatry. And so the people who worship, it is the love of money that is at the root of all evil. And nobody loves money more than Americans. So it's no big mystery why the Middle East calls us the Great Satan, because we are a country that lives in one of the 7 deadly sins. And we'll go into that further, but just to kind of, I'm not against capitalism in certain areas of a culture where people are rewarded for creating things and for making lives better and for discovering medicines. But we have gotten to the point with capitalism where capitalism is actually defeating progress, because progress has become very expensive. It's cheaper to kind of give this veneer of progress than pay lots of money to your investors as dividends. So that is the new capitalism that we're talking about here. I'm not talking about, the capitalism that, hey, it builds the best product. It doesn't do that anymore. Anybody who knows anything about, what's better, we need to keep improving, and the medicines that we keep improving. Anyone that's ever walked into a doctor's office and looks at what they're using, these ancient tools that they use in order to kind of diagnose what's going on with our body, is like, where is the innovation here? I mean, this is ridiculous. This MRI machine has been the same for 20 years. Why does it look exactly the same? Why haven't they discovered a tablet that you can use an app to, obviously because of magnetic resonance and you don't have the right equipment? You know what I mean? But it's because the industry is populated by monopolies, and that they know that research is a lot more expensive than marketing, and that research and having a better product doesn't necessarily mean that your company's going to make more money, but having a better marketing strategy does. So the motivation of money is no longer to produce better products, but to hire better marketing agencies and to have a more impactful marketing plan. And I know, because I've researched marketing a lot. I've worked in marketing before, and it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And anyone who works in marketing should be very ashamed. Finally, or not finally, there's 2 more. We have the Patriotic Judas. What is a Patriotic Judas? A Patriotic Judas is someone who is such a patriot that they actually will destroy the very thing that they pledge allegiance to in order to remind the culture that we're not pledging allegiance to this thing, but that this thing is a symbol of a greater ideal, that this thing is a symbol of a greater ideal, and that is what we are pledging allegiance to. Like, we aren't pledging allegiance to a flag. We are pledging allegiance to freedom. Now, if that freedom begins to, if that flag begins to represent the oppression of freedom, then it is right to burn that flag. Not because you don't believe in freedom and you don't believe in the United States, but you have to destroy the idol in order for people to remember what the idol was for, and to say, Well, no, don't stop that man from burning that flag. That's what the flag means. So anyone that has half a brain, now granted, people probably set flags on fire for a very wide range of reasons, but anyone who sets a flag on fire and understands that what I'm doing here is I'm creating kind of this conundrum within the individual who is pledged his allegiance to this flag and what it represents. I'm making that person think, well, this flag is about freedom. This flag is about liberty. Liberty means that I should be able to destroy this thing if it offends me, and that our nation should be able to tolerate that. So by me trying to oppress somebody from burning a flag, I am in fact defaming the very principles that the flag is based on. That, my friends, is what a patriotic Judas is. I like Judas. We'll go into him a lot longer, later, much more. This is the first podcast in a long time. You guys are going to give me a break. I believe that, Judas's role in the story of the crucifixion was one of a true patriot. And there's several interpretations as to why he did what he did. But it was not to get 30 pieces of silver. That there are some people who believe that he did what he did because he thought that Jesus would finally show these people, if he put them on the spot, that, hey, I am, your Messiah. You can't crucify me because I'm a God. And by putting him into this, into this process, that his true godly powers would shine through. And he would, level the entire, city of Jerusalem. I don't know but that's not my personal belief, but that is a belief. But I do believe Judas, if he wanted money, he carried the money. Most of the disciples anyways, he could have just ran away with their money, but 30 pieces of silver was not why he would turn in basically his best and most dear friend. So he's gotten a bad rap. And that's another thing, is that there's a lot of people who've done things that seem ethically immoral under a belief that the cultural morality has been lost. And so what they do seems immoral because of the fact that the moral compass for the particular culture that they live in is broken. They're not doing something immoral. They're like, Judas turning in Jesus was not immoral, in contrast to what the culture at the time did to him. They should have been like, I don't know why they arrested you. You haven't done anything wrong. You can go home now. And then Judas would have been like, hey, Jesus, man, I got these 30 pieces of silver. Let's hit the town. But that's not what happened. And so my point being is that the reason why you have individuals who put their own personal morality above the morality of the culture that they exist in is because generally people, when they get into large groups and are very afraid, do very bad things. And it is the strong individual, not the weak individual, who appears to be the traitor, but it's only because the ideals that the culture is trying to force upon this individual are, for lack of a better word, evil. And that's just fact. Well, it's not fact. It's an opinion. And then finally, an empathic intellectual. This is one of my main gripes with there's a couple of people that I think are empathic intellectuals in the atheistic movement. But I think that's rare. I think people have a tendency to move towards intellectualization because they have a hard time with any type of emotional empathy. Anytime with a hard time with personal empathy, like feeling their own feeling. And so by intellectualizing these feelings, by intellectualizing this struggle and basically looking at it as, suffering is a fallacy that's based in the brain and blah, 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 as opposed to the experience of suffering or the experience of an individual's emotional perception, for lack of a better word. And when I say lack of a better word, I just mean that I don't have a large vocabulary. But that the empathic intellectual, such as yours truly, uses empathy first, because that's the way that the brain actually works. And study how the brain actually, like how neural pathways move through the limbic system into the higher brain functions before, it's not the other way around. You don't intellectually think of something and then go, oh, hold on a second, I think I'm getting a feeling. It's not the way it works. So empathic intellectual, an empathic intellectual is an individual who's not afraid to feel and not afraid to basically validate their feelings as something that is valuable in a discussion. You see, the Greeks had 3 parts of an argument. We have a tendency to focus on one. It's called logos or logic. Now, I'm not a philosopher. I've taken philosophy, I've studied philosophy, but I'm not here to, the blah, blah, blah argument. I think that in and of itself is kind of a trap that atheists fall into when they are when they are debating a theist. This is why atheists tend to come off very prickly, because theists know that nobody is convinced by logic to do anything. Nobody is convinced by logic to do anything. They can only use logic to temper their emotive states. Human beings are emotionally driven animals. It is our emotions that make us do things. Now, we can temper these emotions with logic because we had the development of the prefrontal cortex. That is like a little computer, but our first response is emotive. And our last response is emotive. And our emotions can negotiate with our prefrontal cortex, but we make decisions based on emotions. And that is something that I believe the atheist community is severely lacking, is offering any type of emotional solace. That you have people that are coming from a highly emotional, a highly existential point of view where experience and existence is what matters. And if you're spending too much time up in your head, then you're missing the moment. And the reasons behind why they do the things that they do are because you don't understand. Something happened. Yeah, something happened. Yeah, you probably had a feeling. That's called a feeling. It doesn't mean God. It doesn't mean magic, unicorns. It means that your brain secreted chemicals. But that is how we understand the world. That's very condescending to anybody when you say, oh, that's just a chemical in your brain. And they're like, oh, I would kill myself for that chemical in my brain that makes me love my kids. Oh, well, that's just evolution, because your kids are basically your prodigy and they carry on your genes and blah, 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 blah. No! What are you talking about? You basically took a beautiful thing, and beauty is an emotion. We have an emotional response to things that are beautiful. Beauty is not logical. If it was, then anything that had what's it called? Bilateral symmetry. If anything that had absolute perfect bilateral symmetry would be beautiful to us because that's how our brain is wired. That is things that we find appealing. But now you find people that are like, whoa, that complete disaster over there is beautiful, or that suffering is beautiful, or that joy is beautiful. Beauty is like a drug, but it's a drug that makes life richer. And logic, as beautiful as logic is in and of itself, and as refined and as miraculous, for lack of a better word, that this organism can create or can evolve into this ability to reason. It's almost, I don't know, it's almost like this vortex that you fall into where reason, and the only way that I can fully understand and experience reason is with emotion. Otherwise, why does it have value? Who cares? Most animals get along just fine without it. But we have, at least as we know it, a very unique experience of life. And yes, it's because of the fact that we have a prefrontal cortex. It's because of the way that our brain is manufactured, but they didn't get rid of emotion. Emotion was not evolved out. Because emotion is the only reason people have a tendency to get out of bed in the morning. Generally, it's poorly placed emotion, like that things will get better, because they don't. They don't just get better, but we'll get into that. But in all honesty, I think the one thing for me personally, and most of the experiences that I've had in debate is that I tend to take the empathic road. And honestly, I have a tendency to think that right now, more than anything else, that's where atheism needs to go. We've won the logos argument. There is no logical reason to have a belief in some entity that defies any type of measurement. In and of itself, that just throws logic out the window. You can't talk about something if you can't take that construct and logically explain it. So now we're just talking for an hour or 2 hours about nothing because they lost, because they can't define the very thing that we're talking about. So logos isn't going to win. The only reason we keep getting drawn into these things is because there are people in the audience that are like, give me something to believe in that's not this. Because my brain knows that this isn't real. But it makes me feel better. And that is valid. Every atheist out there that makes fun of it makes me feel better is a monster. We seek out things. That's evolution. We seek out things that make us feel better. And you can belittle that, and you can patronize that, or you can tell them a story about evolution that I'll tell you sometime that makes me feel better. Science, honestly, should make people feel better, because what our brain wants to do, the logic part of our brain wants to do, is predict. But we're just not good salesmen. We just keep talking about the benefits. Or not the benefits, the features. If you've ever been in marketing and sales, there's features versus benefits. You want to sell benefits. You don't want to sell features. You don't want to sell, hey, atheism will free you from this oppressive religion. Okay, that's a benefit. No, it's not. That's a feature. The benefit is, and then we will make you feel good, and you will be in luxury and blah 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 blah. The feature is the actual thing, the tangible thing, and the benefit is why you want it. And we don't do the why you want it. We, as in the atheists that I watch, we sit there, in all honesty, with smug expressions of frustration at the illogical arguments that that our opponents are holding to, and we're like, it doesn't make any sense. Of course it doesn't make any sense. It's not supposed to make sense. Why would someone hold on to something that doesn't make any sense? Why would someone hold on to a belief that their wife or child that died goes on to another, life afterward? Because they're not ready to accept that all of that energy, all of that effort was for naught. And that's what we tell them. We, being most of the atheists that I listen to, So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I mean, I have logical foundations. I have reasoned foundations, but my arguments are generally empathic. My arguments, I am led by my emotions, but I am extremely smarty pants. And I put those both together, and you have what I call an empathic intellectual. So basically, that is how I classify myself, if I must, because a lot of people, when they get into a discussion with me, they want to have some understanding of what my arguments are going to look like so that they can put together their precomposed destruction of my arguments. And they soon find out that I don't care. They're like, well, then what happened before the Big Bang? I don't care. It's not important. How do you get from what happened before the Big Bang to a burning bush in the Middle East? That would be really interesting. Can you tell me how that happens in 3 or 4 sentences? So I don't care. But if we figure it out, it won't be God, because we'll name it. God is the name for things that have yet to be understood. So how can you talk logically about something you don't understand? You can't. Because you're going to be wrong. Anyways, that's another topic. The meaning of God. But yeah, so you may say, Jesus, why do you call yourself American Jesus? Well, it's simple. Because I think it sounds very cool. No, because I think that it's a great metaphor for how I think that Jesus is perceived today. You take something that has rich cultural meaning and you slap some glitter on it and some red, white, and blue, and you take a couple of statements out of context, and then you develop an entire political party, never realizing, this is the thing that makes it America, never realizing that the thing that you grasped and made your own as your own platform, as your own belief system, no longer has any connection to its origin. That's America. Because you know what? America ain't even America. America is a continent. This is the United States, sometimes called the States by people that don't live in America. But America is a brand. Don't get it wrong. We are the United States in America. Of, meaning in America. There are lots of other countries that are part of America. Canada could say we're America because we're Canada. We're the United Territories of Canada. We're United Territories of Canada of America. So now we're America. Mexico could change their name to America. They have just as much a right to it that we do. So that's the thing, is that I really actually have a tremendous amount of affection for Jesus. I have affection for what he tried to achieve. I have a tremendous amount of disdain for individuals who have taken that incredible story or person and distorted it so much. But we'll talk about Jesus maybe next time. But this is the first and probably highly edited version of the very first show of the American Jesus Show that can be found at AmericanJesusShow.com. And the next show actually will be about what do I talk about? So this is where do I get the kind of beliefs that I have, and how can they maybe be quickly understood in a way that really has no bearing on my actual belief system, which everybody has a belief system, and in my schema or worldview. But the next one will be about what do I talk about? Because there's lots of stuff that I like to talk about. And I like to talk. It's why I am creating this thing again. Because if I don't talk, I go crazy. But agree with me, don't agree with me. Remember, once again, these are my opinions. Just say, hey, American Jesus, those are just Jesus's opinions. Just say that. But always remember that when you criticize my opinions, that's just your opinion. So now we're two people with opinions. Your opinions may have some facts behind them. My opinions may have some facts behind them. Unfortunately, that's it. Just an opinion. You know. But I really appreciate anybody who actually listens to this probably very painful first podcast. And it's really all I got to say for right now. I am American Jesus, and those were my opinions.
Something big. Do you think that what you did would bring you back to this? Hey, you